Welcome to my Premier League predictions for the 25-26 season. We're going to put every team in order of where I think they finish. Last season it was a little bit difficult. Season before that I did very well. So who knows how this will go. We're going to start with the relegated teams in 20th place. Now, I'm not going to do anything outrageous for this. I think there's a common trend that a lot of people are seeing, which basically it's too hard to compete in the Premier League when you're coming from the Championship. But there is a slight difference because I'm going to put the champions in last. I'm going to put Leeds United in last place. The reason for me, they've just not done enough business to sort of improve their squad. I look at their team, I look at it to some previous seasons. I don't really rate the manager either. I just think they're pretty certain to get last place in my opinion. Now, we go on to 19th place, we're going to put a team like Burnley. Of course, losing someone like Trafford to Man City, that's going to, really hurt them. But I think Dubravka's going to make a decent improvement. I just think it's their lack of ability to score goals that will really hamper them. I think they'll be tight at the back, but when you're not scoring goals, you're not winning games, you're not getting 3 points, that's going to keep you near the bottom of the league and certainly relegated. So that means in 18th place, I'm actually going to put Sunderland, who obviously just narrowly got into the Premier League via the playoff finals. Now for me, I just love some of the business they've done. They've not just gone out and spent big, but they've spent, semi-big, but on almost guaranteed talent, players with experience in the Premier League. I like Granit Xhaka. I think he's a great signing. I think Simon Adingra is going to be really key for them. I always rated him at Brighton. And then, less experience, but I like the signing of Mark Guy from Chelsea. Again, just sort of mixing the whole team together. They've signed Enzo Laffi on like a permanent deal who played for them in the Championship. There's some really quality players in their squad, so I don't think they'll have enough to stay up. Often when teams go out and, completely buy a new set starting 11, it can go against them. I don't think that will go fully against them, but it's just so hard to compete in the Premier League coming from the Championship with all the financial restrictions and the risk of going back down. Now, if any of the newly promoted teams were to survive in the Premier League, I think the most likely candidate to go down, and my 17th place prediction, is going to be Wolves. It makes a lot of sense. They weren't that strong, throughout the season really, and then you go and lose your star players in the form of Cunha and Aït-Nouri. They done so much for that club. I worry about them, but again, I just think that stepping stone from Championship to Premier League is huge at the minute, so they might get lucky. For me, it was quite difficult to split 17th and 16th place. So for 16th place, I'm actually going to go for Brentford. Now, they are in a similar scenario to Wolves where they've lost some of their star men. We don't know if more are going to go like Visa, but ultimately, the key difference is they've lost Thomas Frank, their manager. Their only ever manager to manage them in the Premier League. It's going to be absolutely huge. But when you look to the broader picture, when you look to their squad, I think it's naturally stronger than Wolves. So I'm going to put them in 16th Brentford. And yeah, I think they might be lucky to stay up as well. For my 15th place prediction, I'm going to put West Ham. Now they do have a decent squad on paper, a semi-decent manager. They're just not really strengthened. In fact, they've got weaker with selling Mohamed Kudus. But ultimately, there is a really negative vibe from the fans. The squad isn't particularly good. I can just see a bad run of form. The fans get on their back. They're looking for changing of managers. They're looking for signings of players that aren't going to come. I just think they're in a really bad position this year. They've got a semi-decent squad though. People like Bowen, going to keep them up. Moving on, I'm going to go to 14th place and Bournemouth. I mean, the huge risk of them here is they've just sold pretty much their entire defensive line. Now, they've got huge profits for them. We won't know if they will reinvest, but losing Kerkez, Huijsen, Zabazny, and Kepa, that's just not great. In terms of signings, they replaced Kepa with Petrovic. Fine, I think that would be like for like. The only reason I have them so high is their attacking talent and most importantly their manager. They've got a world-class manager. I think he'll do the best with sort of the hand he's given. 13th place, we've got an interesting one because they've just won the FA Cup and I'm going to put Crystal Palace in 13th place. The reason for it is different because they've kept most of their star players so far. You know, it's looking like Eze's going to stay. Looks like Mark Gay's going to stay. Wharton in midfield is very strong. Ultimately, for me, it's just they've got a good starting 11 with some weakness, but when you look to their reserves and their entire squad, that's when you start to see sort of issues with the team. So when they're going to be playing in Europe, I think they could be spread a bit too thin. They either completely, give up on Europe, which I don't think they'll do, or their Premier League performances won't be as good. So that's why I have them in there. 12th place, we're actually going to go with Fulham. Now, this is weird because they haven't really signed anyone. They've sort of done no business in the window. They got, I think it's a comp for 500k as a backup goalkeeper. Now, that could change, of course, before the season starts or by the end of the transfer window. But for me, that's not always a bad thing. Helping a team to stay together as a unit, but it'll be tough to improve if you don't really change anything at the same time. So they're going to go 12th. So for me, in 11th place, climbing 2 places from last year and maybe potentially going higher depending on who they sign here, I'm going to put Everton. I think David Moyes is a really underrated manager. And when you look at their squad, there are some serious players in there. Dewsbury Hall's going to improve them. I really like, obviously Branthwaite, Pickford. Defensively, they're going to be very strong. And I just think, at the end of last season, they played very well. You roll that into the new season, I can definitely see them having a good season and being linked with Jack Grealish. That's absolutely key as well. Someone like him, any of these sort of mid-table clubs will be all over Grealish, but who knows if that deal will be completed or not. Probably the most risky prediction of the entire video is 10th place, and this is weird, Tottenham. Yeah, 10th place Tottenham is risky after a 17th place finish. Now, they could go higher, they could go lower. Ultimately, a decently strong squad. They've lost like Son. But what I think about mainly for them, they focused on the Europa League. They had huge injuries under Ange's high press system. I think they're probably a better team than people give them credit for. It's just those injuries and sort of giving up on the league to focus on Europe, that made them look so much worse towards the end of the season. But also, I can't put a team that just avoided relegation any higher than 10th place. It just wouldn't be right. In 9th place, I'm going to put the team that absolutely ruined my scores last season. Of course, Nottingham Forest. In terms of their squad, it's pretty decent. They have lost Anthony Elanga. He's going to be key, or he was key last season. But so far, they've kept the base of their star players. Murillo, Milinkovic, Sells in goals. That's going to be seriously strong. Keeping Morgan Gibbs-White. All of this should sort of give them confidence. They were a top 4 club for most of last season. They were in the top 4. So finishing 9th, I have no idea how their fans would feel because, you go from a 7th place finish to 9th, it's worse. But maybe you shouldn't be there in the first place, I don't, there's a lot more money being spent by different clubs, but obviously a sign of intent for them, and I expect them to stay in the top 10 at least. 8th place might shock a few of you because I'm actually going to go for Brighton, and I understand they lost probably their best player in João Pedro to Chelsea, but this is Brighton. They always have depth. They always have a new youngster coming on the scene. And don't underestimate the business they've done in the window. De Kuipers from Belgium or Boscagli from the Eredivisie, they're going to be seriously strong. And I also think back to the last window where they really strengthened some of their players. It was their first time in the Premier League. It takes time to bed in, and then they sort of excel in the second season. So actually, for me, I don't think they will be missing João Pedro completely. And to be honest, for a lot of the season, across multiple seasons, he's a bit of an injury risk. They didn't have him the whole time. So maybe a bit overrated how much he'll be missed from other people. I'm confident in them having a really good season. I think Hertzler's a fantastic manager and overall a really well-run club. Just a quick note, I've set up a site where you can tip or subscribe to the channel to help fund some of these videos. It would be so helpful. Go to the page, drop £1. It's a one-off payment. That would make me so happy. You don't have to. All the content's going to stay free, but if you did, I'd really appreciate it. 7th place, I'm going to put Aston Villa. For me, a really strong team in this transfer window, they've just had their hands tied by PSR. There's not really much they can do. They've not really strengthened drastically. They've not really got worse drastically. I can see players like Maatsen kicking on a level and improving them, but ultimately players maybe like Ollie Watkins could still go to maybe a Newcastle or somewhere else. It's unknown. I think Rodgers again will have another good season of sort of his breakout last season. But overall, they're just a really solid team, so a 7th place finish sort of makes sense. 6th place is a club you might have thought I forgot about because I haven't mentioned them already. Man United. Yes, they finished 15th last season and I'm putting them 6th. That is wild. It's a huge risk for me. But I just think they're a quality squad with a quality manager, and I absolutely love the transfer business they've done. You can go out, and they've done it before, spending huge money on players, but it's huge risk if they haven't played in the Premier League before. They've got, Mbeumo and Cunha, Premier League stars in their own teams. I just think that's going to be perfect. You have your strikers up front, probably Benjamin Sesko, but if he's off, you can get Højlund in or Xerxes in, who's ever going to stay. I just think it will sort of click together. All the money they've spent, they've actually brought in good players. There's just been this huge toxicity, managers trying different systems, and out of all the systems, I think Amarin's will work. Amad Diallo and Dorgu, I could see having huge seasons as sort of a wing-backs role. It's risky, but I'm backing Man United to have a good season. Now, I think the top 4 this year is pretty consistent on who everyone's going to put there, and I'm not going to change that. 5th place, I'm going to have Newcastle. Now, this is a very weird one because I love the business they've done, but I'm not putting them to improve from last season. Why? Alexander Isak, by far their best player. I'm worried that it's not like he'll leave anymore. He might just be unhappy because he wasn't allowed to leave and not play to his best potential, basically. On the counter to that, if he did, I love the business. Their 2 weakest parts. Goalkeeper, Nick Pope, had an awful season. He just doesn't look like that good of a goalkeeper, basically. And right wing, obviously they had Jacob Murphy there for bits of it. Anthony Elanga is going to be a drastic improvement on that. Overall, the rest of their squad hasn't really changed. So, yeah, players like Anthony Gordon got bags of talent, didn't have a fantastic season, can see them, getting back to their best and just really putting Newcastle back on top. But Isak can make that all fall apart, so a bit risky. This top 4 took me absolutely ages to decide. I have no bias from really any of them. It's just how difficult it is because they've all strengthened seriously and we don't know how most of their players will play. So let me try my best. It could go in any order, but 4th place, I'm going to go Man City. Now, arguably, they have the best squad now. That is probably my opinion. Them or Arsenal. But for me, they're going to need time to gel as a team, how they link together, how they work. Guardiola's systems, it's going to be new to a lot of the players. It's a changing of the guard, I love someone like Shirky. I think towards the end of the season or, whenever he gets a proper run of guaranteed minutes, he'll show the world exactly how good he is. Reinders is exactly the sort of man they need to attack and take on players and break down, low block teams. But maybe just a season too soon. I think they still rely on Rodri too heavily at central defensive midfield. And as of yesterday, he's going to be missing the start of the season. So maybe a tough start to the season, good end to the season, sort of like last year, but not as dramatic. I could see that. I think this top 4 will be smashing teams week in, week out, which leaves me with a difficult choice in 3rd place. I'm actually going Arsenal. Starman, Saka, injured last season. Weakness, striker, they've improved with Gyökeres, who I think is a top talent. I think he'll hit the league well. Not outstanding, but I think he won't be a flop. And they've dropped a position. Yeah, I'm starting to lose faith in Arteta, basically. So many times during last season, games they should be winning or changing the system, it's just not really happening. So although I like sort of the business they've done and their squad everywhere, fantastic, maybe the manager's what sort of lets them down at this top end. You need to be a winner, and so far he's been the opposite of that. He's been the bridesmaid, and I see it getting worse. Again, risky. This top four can go anywhere, but second place. Oh, I thought about it. I am going to put Chelsea second place. Now, am I getting carried away? Club World Cup, smashing PSG in a competition that kind of doesn't matter, kind of does. I don't think so, no. What Chelsea have been building is a young squad, and they are developing every single season. They're clicking more as a unit, but better than that, they continue to spend money. I think the only thing holding them back, previous seasons, is a proper goalkeeper, a standout star. Now, I think they will sign someone because they've got that Club World Cup money, because they've made some good sales. Someone like Donnarumma's on the market now for about 28 million, the rumour is. Chelsea should snap that up, pay 30 mil if you need to, just get him in. But still, I think they'll fall short because of the lack of experience. Putting all your eggs in the Cole Palmer basket. I think he's amazing, but surely he even has a kink in the armour where it just won't work to win the league with an inexperienced squad. I can actually see them winning it unless they don't sign a goalkeeper. That's my thoughts, because obviously first place, Liverpool, taking the favourites. For me, I've gone back and forth on them. New players, losing some key talent. But ultimately, they won the league by a decent margin. They've strengthened drastically. And I just think of their front sort of three of the four, Wirtz, Salah, Gakpo. I just think that is like some of the top talents in the world. A manager that doesn't need to change anything. Kirkez is a massive improvement on Andy Robertson. It's so hard to see them not winning the league. I think they'll score huge amounts of goals. The weaknesses I see is sort of defensively. Kirkez, Frimpong, Kanate could push up too far and be sort of just leave Van Dijk on his own. Salah could go off. At some point he will start to fatigue due to age. Probably won't be this season. So ultimately, for me, I think it'll be tighter than most Liverpool fans think. But I think their dominance, their goal scoring will pull them over the line, back-to-back Premier League champions.